This is DJRF, and you're listening to Country Lunch on WOOL 91.5 FM from Bellows Falls. And we do have guests today. I have Paleo Mountain Man here with me, and I also have possibly Budcat 7 will be calling this week. And we'll be getting to talk more about walls. Is that? Yes, I hear the phone ringing now. Yeah, hello there, Budcat.
Hey, Al, how you doing?
Oh, you can hear me pretty good. I guess you can hear Jim, too.
Hi, Dave.
Yeah.
Oh, what are you guys up to today? Bernie Sanders seems to have taken the New Hampshire primary.
Like a storm. He did.
He did. Well, they're tied in delegates, 9-9, him and Buddha.
That's a lot about persistence with him, I guess, huh?
Yeah, he works hard. He works hard for his... What do you think about that in New York? Bloomberg?
I'm a political atheist, so
oh, okay.
I don't really believe in the process, so I sort of stay out of it.
Okay, so if we go back to prehistoric times, there was no leaders, no elections, no what? What do you think was happening back then?
There may have been leaders in elections back then, but at least it was genuine. I don't know about now.
Oh, wow.
I don't know about now. When you hear about Bernie Sanders taking money from Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and all that kind of stuff, it makes you wonder. Just makes you wonder.
Well, he was a musician, or he still is. I know people that have played music with him. In his younger days, he was a musician. He'd go around Vermont. He used to play at some of the open mics that some of my friends played at. And Al might have played with him. Have you played music with Bernie?
No, I never played with Bernie. I've watched him walk in the parades, and I've talked to him with emails before he started running for president. He doesn't talk to me anymore, but...
He's got a lot to do.
Whoops, that fell down.
He's got a lot to do, I guess.
What does he intend to do about the stone walls of New England and all the stone constructions and stone chambers, and what does he intend to do about all of that stuff?
That's your job. Let's see what your guys are up to today.
I don't think he knows about them. I think he's probably like most people. It's in the back of their mind. They know there's stone walls, but what's the big deal? I can't learn anything from them. They're past. They're old. They're nothing. That's what they write in the books anyway. They're really not worth looking at. Don't take a second look. Don't look here. And when you hear someone say that, don't look here, always take a better look, because there's something...
Make sure that you look exactly where they say don't look.
It's a good way to live your life, I think. And I think a lot of people, more and more, since, well, the 70s, the 60s, we've been doing that, at least in my lifetime. I've never been a conformist, although I have in a lot of things. In my mind, I tend to disagree with everything until I figure it out on my own. And I think you can read all the books you want. You can read books about stone walls of New England, and they'll tell you everything you need to know. Except in the end, you won't know anything. You'll just go back to the same old thing.
You'll know less than nothing.
You won't know anything, right? Less than nothing, right? You won't know anything. There's nothing there for you, and that's true. That's what they're telling you. And if you read their books, there's nothing.
Complete misdirection. Complete. As Jimmy and I were just talking about before we got on the radio here, we were talking about. I was talking about an article written in the Vermont Digger, VT Digger, which I guess is an online magazine or newspaper publication, and they went to the so-called expert on the stone walls, Dr. Robert Dorsett from the University of Connecticut, which, in my opinion, and that's where the whole misinformation campaign is coming from, by the way, the University of Connecticut, because they also have Dr. Ken Fader there, who I've had some dealings with. He's the hoax expert. He doesn't figure out hoaxes. He just writes books on them and makes lots of money on it. And same with Dr. Robert Thorson. And we were just talking about it, how Dr. Robert Thorson says, well, the walls weren't really put there for, to keep anything in or keep anything out. They're not really that important in that sense. They're just, farmers clearing piles, and that's about it. So he's completely invalidating any of legitimate research on any of these walls.
Well,
And that's the kind of,
there's really never been any research done. You go with a conclusion into the field, and you're going to walk out with that conclusion. You'll prove it
there's
somehow.
research done, but he doesn't care about any of that stuff. They've already have their minds made up, and that's one of the things that Jimmy and I were talking about before we got on, was that people start with a preconceived notion about the walls, because that's all they've ever heard. If they live in the New England area, they moved there from another place, like Robert Thorson, for instance. He grew up in North Dakota or South Dakota or something like that. And he worked in Alaska, so he's not even from the area here. Like I said, he moved to the area, he looked out the window, he saw the stone walls, he said, I'm a geologist, so I'll be the expert on the stone walls. So that's what he did. And you know what? He can get away with it a little bit, because colonists and settlers did build stone walls, but they built like the finest examples of them. He even admits that. But as far as the old stone walls are concerned, they're nothing. They just don't mean anything. And they supposedly kept everybody's sheep in. So according to Thorson, they didn't build them more than waist high. And many of them aren't even waist high, right, Jimmy? They're maybe like 2 or 3 feet tall, top.
Yeah, sheep climb.
In the majority.
Sheep climb pretty well. It's not going to keep sheep.
Yeah,
out.
I think sheep and goats are natural-born rock climbers.
In my area, where I live, right down the street where the old farmhouse is, when you come up my road, there's a little field that the farmers cleared, and there's a giant pile of rocks. It's not real giant, but it's a pile of rocks in the corner of the field, sort of out of the way. And you'll see those here and there and here and there. And those are how farmers cleared their fields. And they'd use those rocks to build certain types of walls, and you can pick them out every time. They're built differently than the walls we're talking about. When farmers cleared fields, they didn't build intertwining walls all the way through the woods. They didn't do it. And they didn't build them in lines that went up and down a hill for no reason at all. Why would you do that? Why would you spend all that work? Why would you twist your ankle and break your leg and crack your knuckles for no reason at all, when you can throw a pile of rocks into a big pile?
Yeah, I haven't gone over that on my channel yet. I had intended to, about the dangers of building stone walls. There's a lot of, it's very dangerous work to build stone walls.
Yeah.
And one of their notions is that these farmers got out there with their kids, their 11 and 12-year-old kids, and they were lifting 65 and 75-pound stones and taking the risk of incurring a serious injury. You're telling me that these farmers had time to build these walls in between all the chores and tasks that one has to do on a farm, especially in primitive times. They had time to build these stone walls in between doing all the stuff that they have to take care of on a daily basis. I find that hard to believe.
I don't believe it at all. And I live in a situation where I move a lot of stones to sort of make my place free of stones so I can walk around. Where I live, a lot of the stones were on top of the ground, laying around. And for about 2 years, I was able to move stones, and that was it. I was done moving stones. I couldn't do it anymore, because after 2 years, my arms were hurting, my legs were hurting, my back was hurting. I couldn't walk anymore. And it's cumulative. And if a farmer did that, how is he going to, go out and plow his field the next year, and then go out and plow, which is hard enough. I mean, plowing a field behind a horse can't be easy. I certainly wouldn't want to do it.
If you break your fingers, or you injure one of your farm animals, like an oxen or something like that, towing around stones,
to build a useless wall, to build a
plow your field. Right. On the one hand, Thorson is saying that fields weren't meant, the stone walls weren't meant as walls per se. They were just more or less a place to put them or whatever. And then on the other hand, you have other experts saying, well, they would. To keep in, farm livestock, etc. I mean, they can't make up their minds on any of these things. And one of the articles was saying about how sheep farming and sheep, that sort of farming ended in the 1840s 1830s and 1840s, and meanwhile, there's no discussion about the coldest decade in 500 years and the year without a summer in 1816, where in Vermont alone, in just Vermont in 1816, they lost 7 years of population gains in 1 year. So in 1816, they lost, a hefty amount of their population to relocate there because they couldn't grow anything up there. And we know that the New England area is not a big crop, at least a mountainous country is not big crop farming. It's all dairy country, okay? And these people were not doing dairy back in the early 1800s. They may have had their sheep or whatever it is, but you can't keep the sheep in an area with stone walls that are only 3 foot high, 2 or 3 feet high. The sheep would go up and over those things. Well, what they say is they put up a picket fence. So you spent how many years building this stone wall, and then you're going to put a picket fence up on top of it to keep your sheep in?
Dave,
I don't see it.
I couldn't imagine even demolishing one of these walls and putting the stones back. Never mind taking all the stones from where they were and putting them on top of the ridge in the hardest place possible, in an arrangement where they don't move, where they stay where they are. It's not a thrown together wall. They're built
No,
in a
they're
specific
carefully
way.
built, and it's built like a puzzle. It's built like a puzzle, and not only that, in Kevin Gardner's book, The Granite Kiss, okay, Kevin Gardner's family, he's from Maine, I believe, and his family's been building stone walls for generations, okay? According to him, the average size of the stone walls, the stones in the stone walls, and at least the archaic stone walls, is 65 to 75 pounds, okay? That's number one. And number two, the way that they're constructed and put together is so convoluted. You would have to literally be sitting there with a giant pile of stone. And as you put and placed each stone on the stone wall, you would have to find the exact one that would fit there. You would have to go through maybe a dozen different stones before you actually put the one on the wall that fit there the best.
That's exactly true. Imagine putting the spiral up into the wall. How would you do that? Would you lay it onto the ground, like you said, and then build it stone by stone back into the wall? The spiral that's built in the wall doesn't move. It's been there for so long, and it's so well built. It still looks like what it did. And how do you plan that ahead of time? Do you just throw rocks together on a wall and it comes out? Or do you plan it? And I think they knew what they were doing. It was a science to them. And they probably had a history of building walls for so long. All the convoluted walls that are in the woods are them also. Different times and different spaces of time that they were building walls. And maybe they were connecting stone to stone to stone in some geowork idea that they had, because they did build mounds also and ditches and things like that with earth, and you don't see those anymore in New England. The forest is hard on those things.
Not a lot of them anyway. Most of them are gone. But the point is that to build a stone wall is very time consuming, because you have to get the right stone to fit into the next level, in a way that it's going to sit there and last. So, they give us the impression that these farmers just created a field of stone, put it in a big pile, and then they went ahead and started building the walls. But the walls take it's very time consuming to build because they're put together like a puzzle.
You can find out more information by going to Paleo Mountain Man or Stonewall Research Budcat 7 on YouTube.